All right, so we are heading up to Mackinac next week and talking to a lot of people that we really haven't been face to face in front of in a very, very long time. But I think before we jump in on what the biggest topics are going to be up there, biggest discussion, I want each one of you to give us a sense from your perspective where we kind of stand as a state right now when it comes to jobs growth and recovery and coming out of this. Nolan, let me start with you.
I think we're posed for a pretty strong recovery if we can get our workforce in shape. We don't have enough people re-emerging into the workforce to sustain growth. I mean, nationally, we're running at 5-6% growth. That should be boom times for Michigan. And yet we see the automakers struggling because they can't get chips. And we see other businesses struggling because they can't get employees.
So, I mean, I think I agree with almost everything that Nolan said there, incredibly. But I guess I would
harder during this down.
I would add to that my concern about cities like Detroit, where before the pandemic we were on the precipice of this incredible comeback in downtown. And I'm just talking about the center of the city here. With job growth and new restaurants and really a critical mass of people at all hours of the day and night, something I haven't seen in Detroit since I was a pretty little kid. But Nolan and I, for instance, were downtown this week for lunch in a place that should have been packed and wasn't. When you walk the streets downtown, there's still this emptiness. And there is this big picture question about how much will people return to work? And so what happens to all of this office space, all these buildings that were redone and populated that may not have the kind of density that they did before?
I'm not quite sure we're going to see 5 days a week again and people all in the same kind of space. And then if you have companies that are going to start hemorrhaging, saying, you know what, we're going to let this lease go. You know what, we're going to totally move this. It's a massive blow to the tax base, Nolan.
Mm-hmm. That's right. We can't happy talk this as people have been trying to do. And we've got to face up to the reality that if people don't come back to work in those offices, they're not likely to return to those apartments in the great numbers, and they're not likely to return to the restaurants and bars and other entertainment venues.
So let me ask you this, Stephen, what do you want to hear from Mike Duggan? And what should he say to people up on Mackinac when he's got business leaders, philanthropy up there? What should he say?
I think he's got to start focusing on some of the reality, which is that we're going to have to adapt to all of this and that we're going to have to do things a little differently. And we're going to have to grow Detroit perhaps in a different way. The other thing that I think we ought to note, though, is that, the mayor is walking around now with about $800 million in his pocket, which is an incredible sum. And it is an incredible advantage that I can't remember any mayor having, but certainly a mayor who looks like he's about to start his third term. He's going to be able to do a lot more than he has been able to do in the immediate past. And so that gives him some opportunity, I think, to have some real clout in that conversation.
Talking about the 800 million, let's talk about the billions that could be coming here now to Michigan, and mm-hmm. let's look at it statewide. Nolan, are we starting to make the right decisions, or do we have a good enough political consensus that to make the right decisions about where to spend this kind of once in a generation money that is going to be coming to Michigan for recovery?
I don't think we have a clue. We haven't seen that decision making really get started yet. I was talking to one of our county leaders this week and asked about the money his county was getting and didn't yet even have a clue how to spend it. They're getting so much money that they didn't expect, they didn't plan for, they didn't identify needs for. And you hear that in community after community. Yeah, we got this money. We really don't know what we're going to do with it. And I think there's got to be a consensus that this money's not coming every year. You're not going to get it next year. You've got it to spend for the next 2 to 3 years. How are you going to spend it in a way that improves your community, improves your state for the long term? What investments are you going to make that will pay off in years to come when that money disappears from your annual budget?
Stephen, what do you think? Because I mean, these are decisions that you do have to look out for the long term and say, how can we leverage this with what we have going on today? And I'm thinking about infrastructure. I'm thinking about all these different kinds of things that say, you know what, if we've got this pile of money, this is where we need to put it. Education also is on my mind as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can't build it into the budget as though it's going to be there every year. And so you've got to spend it in a way that has an impact in the long term, but that the spending only happens up front. And so there are certain kinds of things that government in particular can do. If you can get some of that going, if you can leverage some of that money to get other money for infrastructure, given that it's the price tag there is way more than anyone is getting in this stimulus. Those are the kind of things that will make a difference. You know, in the school system in Detroit.
Yeah, I would also like to see Washington take some of the strings off. If Michigan and in these counties and these communities that are struggling could use some of that money to pay down their long-term legacy costs, their long-term pension debt, to put in creative financing for their health care, like Oakland County did a few years ago, you could really make a difference in the long-term financial health of these places.
Let me ask you guys, what are the things that you're looking forward to hearing or seeing up at Mackinac? Stephen, let me start with you.
Well, I mean, again, I'm just going to be happy to see everybody in one place again after a really long time away from that. You know, I think this talk about the future and what it looks like in the short term and what it looks like in the long term. Normally we're doing this in the spring instead of the fall. We haven't done it in a year and a half. But it's an odd time in the pandemic because it's not behind us the way we thought it would be. I'm really eager to see how people are planning for the unplannable or the unforeseen in the short term and the long term.
Nolan, what about you?
Well, a business community runs on relationships, and we haven't been able to do much relationship building over the last couple of years. So this is a good opportunity for people to reconnect, to reestablish connections with other people they might be able to collaborate with, to have creative collisions. It's just good to have people back face to face, talking to each other.